Welcome to Total Apex Sports. This is the fourth and goal. I'm Andrew with my guest Cody, our Bears beat writer, and Sean, our fantasy writer. And yeah, we're going to be basically talking about our takeaways and recapping week three and previewing a little bit of week four, but covering mostly the quarterback and tight end rankings for this coming week. But yeah, I guess we can start with the takeaways from week three. Sean, you can go ahead with that.
Yeah, I had jotted a few down, but just a couple thoughts for fantasy is what do you do with the Denver backfield? Sean Payton traditionally puts out excellent running backs. Someone who does like the Bush or the Darren Sproles role, and then his lead back with like a Deuce McAllister or Mark Ingram. And we thought it was Javante, and then he fumbled last week, and then Tyler Beatty came in. He just
Mm-hmm.
he got in the mix. So normally that's somewhere you can go for value in the fantasy backfield. So that's kind of what I took away. Now it's like three people. So where do we go from here? Who can you trust? And that was
Yeah,
one, big thing I had there. And then two other points. You're going whoever Dallas is facing, you want to start their running backs, obviously, right now. That's where you're going for, a lock or a home run. And then you want to obviously start your receivers against the Redskins pass defense. That's my top three takeaways I had.
yeah. I think Devin Singletary is going to be a pretty good start this week against Dallas on Thursday. But yeah, Cody, do you have any non-Bears takeaways? And then turn it to
Yeah,
you.
I mean, a lot of fantasy eggs were laid by top tier
Yeah.
talent, and with so many dudes out on injuries, it was like enter Juwan Jennings, right? The explosion for 3 touchdowns, a buck 75, hanging it on a pretty paltry Rams defense. I think a lot of people got caught with Jennings on their bench. He kind of picked up off the waiver wires at a pretty good percentage, especially in 12 and 14 team leagues. But man, if you're lucky enough to start that guy, I mean, it kind of goes to show, that 49ers offensive machine. It's not Christian McCaffrey. It's not Debo Samuel. It's all pieces moving in unison at once. And
Yeah.
they didn't skip a beat. The 49ers did not lose that game because of their offense. The 49ers lost that game because they gave up an insane amount of yards and points to a Rams offense that was also depleted. No Puka Nakua, no Cooper Cup. I mean, Kyron Williams, I think he had 116 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns against one of the most talked about and, seemingly stingy defenses in the entire NFL. I mean, just blew open the water. So, that and then the Broncos going down to Tampa and laying it on the Bucks. Those were kind of my two big takeaways. Fantasy purposes, Godwin had a salvageable game, but Baker was down. Rashad White was down. Mike Evans was down. It was just a really weird week in the NFL, and that translated to a really weird week in fantasy.
Yeah, the
Cody,
thing
you
about Jen,
okay.
yeah, go ahead, Sean. Go
Cody,
ahead.
to piggyback off that great point you made, Baker, I believe he came in as QB1 going into
Yeah.
that, and obviously didn't work out that way.
No, he made that Broncos defense look like a bunch of all pros out there. I mean, that was the way that Baker played in weeks 1 and 2 for fantasy purposes and real football purposes was super encouraging. I was rooting for the guy, and then to lay an egg like that in front of your home crowd was kind of like a little bit of a head scratcher. But what do you do? The Raiders lost
Yeah.
to the Panthers. Andy
Mm-hmm.
Dalton,
uh,
Andy
I,
Dalton comes off
What a
the
difference
couch
yeah,
and
and he
and
brought Deontay Johnson's fantasy value, shot that right up the board too. I mean, he was a monster last week.
that was nuts. And then Adam Thielen, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
basically from a wheelchair, like he just starts hanging up fantasy
yeah.
points too. I mean, it was a bad week to be a Raiders fan. And if you would have started, what was that I saw? If you would have started all Panthers offense, right? Chuba Hubbard, Deontay, Thielen, Dalton, you would have outscored a bunch of like
Mm-hmm.
number ones at their position that laid eggs. It was insane.
I had a
Yeah.
question. Oh, sorry, Andrew. Go ahead, buddy.
No, actually, surprisingly, the Raiders actually had. I mean, it was mostly in like they're trying to air it out and keep up with the electric Panthers offense. But Trey Tucker and Jacoby Meyer, they actually got like a decent amount of volume that I didn't think. Like I thought Bowers and Adams would be, getting all that, but yeah, it was kind of interesting how that game played out. But yeah, Sean, you can go.
Yeah, I had Cody. You'll be able to get on this one for sure. So I had 2 quarterback points. Is Deshaun Watson, will he ever play as a quarterback 1 anymore for fantasy? And 2, you got to like Caleb Williams going forward with the pass volume because they can't run it. But I think it was 52 pass attempts. So if you're for fantasy, you got to like his prospects as a QB1 for the rest of the year. And, Watson found it a little bit. I think they might need to do some more design runs for him for his fantasy value for him to ever be a QB1. But it's like, I don't know if it's their 2 tackles being out doesn't help, obviously, but like, it's like he forgot how to play. It's strange. It's just like, and he got sacked a ton of times by the Giants. And I mean, I just don't know if he's ever outside of Superflex, is he startable anymore?
Yeah, I mean, both awesome points. I mean, Deshaun Watson, when he was with the Texans, his floor was always that rushing volume, right? And we haven't really seen that in his down years with the Browns. And I think it just boils down to this is a mental game, right? Football, it's a mental game, and then it's physical beyond that. And Deshaun Watson, with all of his problems off the field, I think it's undeniable that it has impacted his play and it has impacted his fantasy value to managers who have really been looking forward to him kind of prospering in this offense. That it's been shown to be prolific. It can feed mouths like Cooper and Chubb, and it can have fantasy relevant players. And I'm kind of out on Deshaun Watson. I actually have been stashing Jameis Winston in a couple of my deeper leagues, just kind of waiting for him to get his chance. Because if Jameis Winston gets the reins in that offense, I mean, he's going to throw for 40 touchdowns and 40 interceptions. It's like you just hope you can get a good stack, like him and Cooper.
Now, Cooper came to life. That helped. I mean, if you're going to hang your head on anything, Cooper coming to life obviously helps Watson. He can't come to life without Watson, but
no way, man. But
I don't know.
Like I started Amari Cooper in weeks 1 and 2, and then I'm just like, man, I can't do it in week 3. And then all of a sudden, boom, he goes off, and he's really the only player for the Browns that did anything fantasy wise.
Yep.
But yeah, and then what you mentioned about Caleb Williams, just to touch on that real quick before we move on. Fantasy value moving forward, I think, he's going to have some good games coming up here in some daily slates too, as well as some best ball leagues, because, going back to last week, the next 4 games for the Bears were against winless teams after week 2, right? And so now that slate's still pretty good. There's no more winless teams in the NFC, and I think it's just the Jags and who else is left winless on the AFC side. But
is it the Bengals? Or maybe the Bengals. I can't remember.
Yeah, Bengals. That's right. 0-3. And that slate of games going forward into the Bears bye week, and then even after the bye week, they come out of that. They don't even play a division game until week 11. So Caleb Williams is going to have time to get right.
He's set up nicely.
And I think the Bears did find their identity on offense in the second half against the Colts last week. The running game, it's not there. They don't trust it. It is what it is at this point, and it's just like they have to throw the ball around the yard to have a chance to win. I think they found their identity in the intermediate passing game with Williams, and they get Keenan Allen back hopefully this week, it looks like. I think that's going to be kind of the Bears' key to salvage out a couple wins here.
If you can get Rome Meduse, if he's still out there, or Dunze, I'm sorry, I said it wrong, go get him right now, because I think he's going to take over opposite more. And I'm not sure what's going on with Keenan Allen, but like I think Allen's arrow is pointing down and Dunze is pointing up. I mean, and with that kind of pass volume, they could support many weapons.
Many. Right. I mean, that one game they fed Matt. Go ahead,
Andrew. But Dunze had a huge game. Andrew, thank you. He pulled it right up there. That's, I mean, that look at that line. That's wide receiver 1 numbers right there.
Oh yeah. He exploded on the scene.
Before we move on to the Steelers, Jordan Ramos, fellow Total Apex writer, he was commenting on like the Niners falling apart because of their defense, and then the Panthers. Well, this is kind of funny because this week the Red Rifle going against his former team against the 0-3 Bengals, so that's actually going to be an interesting game to watch.
Big angle there.
Performance. Yeah, and then and then he made a comment about Watson. The funny thing is the Browns, they use Jameis in like the 4th and 1 plays, like for the QB.
I saw
they
that.
They don't even trust Deshaun. Like,
that didn't make a lot of sense to me either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So true.
But yeah, speaking of the better teams in the NFL, I mean, we got to talk about the Steelers. Like, this is something I was not expecting. I mean, most people weren't expecting that, but Sean, do you see the Steelers, going potentially 4-0 and they're playing the Colts this week?
Yeah, I mean, they started. That's going to be 3 out of their first 4 on the road. Their first 2 run the road, they went 2-0, which is, that's money in the bank. So now, their schedule gets better. Now they got 3 out of their first 4 on the road, so they're home heavy schedule. But I knew their defense was good because they can rush the passer.
Mm-hmm.
Al Highsmith went down last week and they didn't miss a beat. Herbig came in there and he wrecked off the opposite side. TJ's drawing all the double teams or and the holdings. Watson did have. I was actually, because I'm writing an article right now. I'm just finishing up on the Colts Steelers DFS. It's actually worked out good. Justin Fields is trending up in yards per attempt, yards per game. He had 18.4 fantasy points per game. Had his best game, so his arrow's trending up. And I have him. I had him as a lock in that DFS article. Not so much because he's. That's probably not a game you're going to for fantasy points with an implied total of 40. But for lock, I think he has the best floor in that game. The best ceiling would go to Richardson, obviously, but the best floor is going to go, I think, to Fields, and he's trending up. He started to throw over the middle to Freiermuth. Freiermuth had a decent game. Pickens is Pickens. We know that. And, I think, they're right there. It's no shock if they go to the Colts with that defense. Defense travels. They'll go on the road, play the Colts. It'll be a close game, as most of their games are. And, I could see them going 4-0. I don't think they're, they're not Buffalo by any stretch. Yeah. You got to score points eventually, but 4-0, 3-0 is 3-0. 3-0 is 3-0, obviously. And like Bill Parcells used to say, you are what your record says you are. So.
Right. I think like the Fields thing for fantasy wise, like this is even without like that much rushing because he's not doing it.
Yeah, he had 6 yards, I think, but he had a touchdown.
Yeah. They're very like they're trying to limit like any turnovers, which has actually been a good thing for Fields. In terms of just against the Colts defense, like they were like a bottom rushing defense in the league. So if Najee's fully healthy, like he should.
Yeah, he's going to probably get the lion's share this week because Warren didn't practice today. So Corey, you could speak to this too. Like you think I guess Fields is probably a better fantasy quarterback than real life quarterback at this point. Now maybe he's 50-50 on that, but if he had 18.4 fantasy points, so that won't hurt. You'd like to get 20 from your quarterback, and when I write in DFS, you need to get bank 20 from your quarterback. So he's close. He's bet his best game.
Yeah, he's right there on the cusp, and really for Fields to save his day for fantasy purposes, all he needs is one run.
100%.
He can do it in one run.
Yeah.
And so, and that same run that can save it for fantasy purposes can save the game for the Steelers too. So that's the one thing that's hard, I think, for Bears fans right now. Is like seeing Justin Fields have success behind an actual offensive line, right? Like, and I think that's a lot of credit to the Steelers organization too, because the Steelers offensive line was not very good the previous season or two, right?
No, they've invested a lot in their draft capital.
Exactly. And I think Bears fans everywhere, I mean, that's a run the football town, right? Bears fans
Absolutely.
everywhere are just like beside themselves about this offensive line. And it's terrible to watch, but it is what it is at this point. They have to make do with it. I don't think there's going to be any real big waves to be had in free agency for the Bears. But that's the big difference for Fields. He has a decent offensive line, and he's in a great environment. I think Mike Tomlin is really good for Justin Fields as a person, as a leader, as a player. And I do think
Absolutely.
that will translate to his fantasy value moving forward as he gets more and more comfortable in that offense.
Yep. And so he's QB 18 right now. But last week he was QB 13. And this week, I think in the rankings they have him. I've seen him as QB 12. So he is right there on the fringe as a QB 1, on the, and for the slate.
Yeah. This is a pretty good segue to the QB rankings. I didn't want to touch on the Bears Rams. I mean, I think Caleb's going to bounce back because the Rams defense, like they could not cover anybody on the Niners. So at least there's a chance for him to potentially bounce back. But yeah, these are how I would rank the quarterback. They're not really in like any order. It's just like in the tiers. They're in a specific order. But yeah, I think Fields is in that like category right behind some of the top guys. But Cody, do you see any potential risers or fallers from these rankings for this week?
Yeah, I was looking to see where you had Jaden Daniels in there.
Oh, I have him at the top.
D4
at the top.
there.
Okay, yeah, my screen's a little bit wonky. Yeah,
Right.
I think Dak Prescott's finally starting to come on a little bit. Did he lead in yardage last week? If he wasn't number one, he was number two. And I think if he works it out with CD and they can kind of get on the same page, and they got to get Brandon Cooks involved. He's a good football player still. They can really utilize Brandon Cook's skill set over the middle of the field. I think Dak Prescott, you're going to see kind of start coming up. I think this New York Giants secondary is very exploitable still. So I would see him as a potential riser in that tier. And then our boy Sam Darnold, man, he's down there at number 13, on Fantasy Pros. He's one of the shocks of the year, but I think with the weapons he has and as prolific as that offense has proven to be, with Aaron Jones clicking on all cylinders and staying healthy so far, I could see Sammy Darns creeping up there a little bit.
Cody, you must have read my notes because my last bullet is Sam Darnold a QB1? That's funny.
In a 12-team league, yes. In a 10-team, he's close.
Yes. Yep. Those are all great points.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. He does have the Packers defense. I think they're like the second ranked defense for fantasy. But I mean, yeah, it is like getting to a point. I guess even more with Baker and Carr. I think Darnold actually has like upside to like push even like further, because I think Baker and Carr they usually they could be fantasy relevant, but in terms of like getting to like a potential like 30+ point ceiling, like I was kind of unsure about those guys, but Darnold, he definitely shown like he definitely improved as a passer. I have no idea, but because like this A tier. I'm really debating on putting Richardson at B tier because, I know he has the rushing upside, but recently he hasn't really done that.
So, no, I'm with you guys. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry,
it's not going to happen against the Steelers for Richardson this week. I mean, it's like Jonathan Taylor's their offense. Michael Pittman, where's he at? He's nowhere to be found.
He might see Joey Porter Jr. too this week, Cody.
Yeah, coming back, right? So
yeah, what Stanford says. And now to back up what you guys say, Richardson right now is QB 19, and he was. You guys helped me on this one. I believe he was QB 5 in ADP in the preseason. So if you drafted him, you're not getting any closer. I think he was QB 5 in the preseason rankings, so you're getting slaughtered on value on that. And he's competing because I actually just did an article on the same one, Andrew, the Steelers Colts DFS, and he's at 49.3% pass completion, Richardson. And last two games, he's at 20 or less pass attempts. So there's no volume there. So like Cody said about Fields, made a great point. Obviously, he has a massive upside, but he's going to need his legs to put him into to even get the QB 12.
Right.
Does it look like? I mean, I watched Anthony Richardson pretty close against the Bears, and then the week before that against the Packers. It looks like he's playing too much between the ears right now. I don't think Anthony Richardson is playing read and react football. I think he's in his head. You can almost watch him go through his progressions, and it's usually just one or two, and then he's doing something. So it's like he's almost like, I don't know if it's like pressure from ownership, if Jim Irsay is like, we got to keep him healthy after what happened last year, because coaching staff, Steichen came out and said, hey, we're going to let him go. We're going to let him rip. Well, he hasn't been ripping. What do you guys think? What do you see out of Anthony Richardson?
Go ahead, Andrew.
I think it's just he's a player coming out of college. Like, he just didn't play that much ball, and like it's kind of showing right now. Like, I have heard, like, it's not really a big whisper or anything, but they have Joe Flacco in the room. If Richardson's still struggling, I mean, maybe he could take a few games off, and just because like his like rawness as a passer is just, it's straight up losing games. So I mean, there's only at a certain point where you have to be like hey, like, you can maybe sit behind a veteran. In terms of like fantasy wise, like, I actually think at this point we're getting to a with scoring down, like, you actually do kind of rather have the safer, reliable, like 200 plus passing yard volume. And like with Richardson, it definitely boomer bust, but more bust at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going off the number, I mean, you're not sitting him. I don't think you're sitting him yet. I think that's a little early to panic. But I mean, I also look, his QB rating is 55. He's 3-6 touchdown to interception ratio, and if the passing volume is going to stay at 20 or less, he can't. He's not. He would not be a QB1 for the rest of the season unless he's rushing for 75 yards and a touchdown every game, because that would offset that. Especially if you're in a 4-point passing versus with a 6-point rushing, that obviously helps. But he's just. It's obviously, if you have him, you're starting him, but if you have better options out there, I mean, maybe if you have a Sam Darnold, I mean, you're thinking about it. Like Cody said, he was doing well. I mean, you might be thinking about putting Darnold in there. I think he'd be someone that, Aaron Rodgers is probably someone you got late. Do you start Rodgers? I mean, you start looking at matchups if you're carrying two quarterbacks with him. I don't think he's an automatic start. He's starting to not be that.
I think you're right, fellas. And I pulled up a little scoring here on Yahoo, and this league is 6 points per passing touchdown. So just keep that in mind. So Anthony Richardson, more fantasy points than CJ Stroud. He's got just about as much as Aaron Rodgers. He's got more than Daniel Jones, more than Justin Fields. He's in that tier of Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. So it's just like comparing him to a quarterback like Stroud and Aaron Rodgers, you're kind of like, okay, I mean, that's for fantasy wise, that's decent company. For real football wise, that's great company. I mean, are we kind of like getting to the panic point a little quick on it, or do we want to give them another 2 weeks? What do you guys think?
Well, I think, like you said, Cody, I'm not sure it's happening this week against the Steelers. From a lot of perspectives, their pass defense is very good. I think the Steelers have, if I remember earlier, they have the best defense. I think they're top against their top two, or I know they're top 3 rush, top 3 versus the pass, and they're 1 overall. And the applied total is 40 or 41 in a game. I don't know. This week, I don't know if it's happening this week, and it's just a tough matchup. And the same thing, obviously, with those numbers. I don't know if the Fields is. I'm not sure you're looking to that game for a fantasy, but like I said, you're kind of obligated because of where you drafted him. You're certainly not cutting him, obviously. Here's another idea. I know a lot of people say this: if he has a blow-up game trade him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sell high.
Yeah, an inflated trade value could really help there. And Anthony Richardson, he's almost shaping up to be like the perfect matchup dependent daily fantasy quarterback, right? It's just like if he gets a great matchup you feel really good about and you can get him on a nice daily slate, that's awesome. But in season long, like you said, the draft capital you had to invest to get him, I mean, you're hurting because you don't want to bench the guy, but he's not an every week starter right now.
And if you drafted him, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I was gonna say, like for fantasy teams, like the turnovers and the lack of rushing, with that pass volume, he has to be like highly efficient, and he just hasn't been so far. It's basically just he's basically just nailing the deep ball, but everything short and intermediate, he's like sailing them to like Michael Pittman and so on. But yeah,
So
I think you have to keep him on your bench. And I mean, if he was your first quarterback taken, you probably have to just start him and just hope for the best. But in a couple weeks, I mean, things could change.
Yeah, he's got 117 yards on the ground in 3 games and a touchdown. I just checked my my stats on that, which is not like crazy like when you see Lamar or
like Jayden Daniels.
Josh Allen, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jamar Jackson's 254, Jayden Daniels 171, Kyler Murray 161.
Yeah, you're kind of expecting him to be in the top 5 or top 3 in QB rushing for sure. But yeah, I think in terms of like Patrick Mahomes, because I kind of left him out of that S tier. It's not even like a matchup thing. I just against the Chargers, I think it's just like he's not really have to do much anymore. I mean, but he is a good safe play, I will admit.
Yeah,
but
I have Mahomes in a couple leagues, and you're expecting 25, 28, not 19 per game.
Yeah, for sure. I actually, in terms of like Jordan Love, has been limited in practice. If he comes back, then that would be I agree. Big jump. But in terms of against the Viking defense, like they've been like a top 5 unit all season. Stroud was struggling against them last week. But yeah.
2 weeks ago, that Vikings defense, they shut down the 49ers offensive machine that we were just talking about earlier in the show. I think that defense is, there's no big high paid stars on it. They play well together. They rally the football. There's always purple jerseys around the ball carrier. And I think that defense is real. And
absolutely.
I think, the NFC North, they're going to have to wake up a little bit. It was everybody thinking, oh, this is the Bears or the Lions division, excuse me, and Packers a wild card, and it was just like, well, hey, not so fast.
Yeah. We can move on to the tight ends, and it's pretty self-explanatory for this, but the tight end position is it's basically whoever you have, you kind of have to just play because I have some. It's really dependent on if McBride plays. I believe he's still in concussion protocol. Laporta had a leg injury that he got carted off, but then he went back in. So I have no idea for that. Njoku might be coming back. Evan Ingram was out, But yeah, I mean, Cody, like, are you kind of surprised to see like Bowers is basically a top 5 tight end? Like, rest of season.
He's 2 right now.
It's a wild world we live in right now for tight ends, isn't it, fellas? It's like, you see a rookie tight end in week 4, ranked number 1 in PPR scoring on Fantasy Pros. That's shocking. The other thing that was shocking, though, is how Brock Bowers performed last week against a really suspect defense in the Panthers. I mean, the Raiders as a whole kind of took the week off, and that was really unfortunate for fantasy. And, Brock Bowers, I think he finished with 5.5 fantasy points. I mean, salvageable day, but still not good, not great for your, I think he was ranked number 2 going into last week behind McBride. But, he's going to have to see a lot more volume moving forward in that offense to retain that spot because guys like Dallas Goddard, who got right last week, he's coming. Kelsey's going to have a Kelsey game soon enough. And, I still am waiting on that Dalton
yeah.
Kincaid blow-up game too.
Yep. I tell you what's crazy, guys, is right now in PPR, Freiermuth is tight end 12 with 12 catches for 99 yards on the season.
I love it.
Isn't that crazy?
I love it.
That's where we're at. And he had one salvageable game, I think was last week.
That's wild, man.
Yeah. I think maybe this week for Bowers, it might be a tough matchup. They are going against the Browns. I know in that game, I saw specifically Theo Johnson of the Giants. He basically dropped a wide open touchdown, so that probably changes their defensive ranking. But yeah, I mean Kelsey, like there's only going to be so many games where we could just assume he's gonna blow up. But I mean, I don't know. Like if you have him, you definitely just have to play him. But
so here's one that pops off the paper at me, fellas. So this is a homer for me right now. At least a beat writer homer. So Cole Kmet went bananas last week, right? He hadn't done anything all year. Go ahead, Andrew. What'd you say?
Oh, yeah, I was debating on putting him on S tier. I think I just want to see it like one more week because with the Gerald Everett splits, like he barely played last week compared to the first 2 weeks. So that would be one thing. But I mean, if they were smart, they would use Kmet for sure.
Yeah, and it's like, I always kind of think of the first, 2-3 weeks of the NFL season as almost like an extension of the preseason since they switched to the current format with the 17 games, right? So you look at Cole Kmet didn't do much the first 2 matchups. And then last week, he puts up 20 over 25 points in PPR format. He's got 10 receptions on 11 targets for 97 yards and a tutty. So in that game, it was like the Rome Odunze and Cole Kmet show. I mean, they each got 11 targets. DJ Moore got 10 targets. They all had really nice days. And, Caleb Williams threw for a lot of yards. I don't think that's going away in Kmet. And I think that the Rams linebackers and safeties, I think they're exploitable against the tight end too. I think you would have seen it a little bit more from the Niners last week had Kittle played. But I think Kmet's a dude that you could see finish top 5 easily this week, and maybe even number 1 overall against that Rams defense.
And you have to like we talked about with them the pass volume. I mean, I think Williams is going to be really good the rest of the year. I could see him easily being a QB1, and like he's got, like you said, if he's going to throw 52 times, there's targets out there to be had.
100%.
In terms of like Kmet, yeah, if the Bears continue to not be able to run the ball and they pass that much, then yeah, Kmet has to be a top 5 guy. And then obviously we saw Goddard blow up. I think Devonta Smith is still in concussion protocol. I don't know if he's going to play this week. So
yeah, him and Brown did not practice today.
Yeah, he should be an automatic start for sure. And then, yeah, some of these guys that just got, 4 or 5 catches for maybe like 40, 50 yards, they're consistently doing it, like Zach Ertz and Mike Gesicki. Like, they're getting to a point where it's actually not bad to have them. 7, 8 points is pretty good than getting like 0 or something like that. But yeah, the last talking point for tight ends I want to bring up, what are people gonna do with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely?
Dude, you got to speak on that one, Andrew. That's your boy right there. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Well, I will. It's gonna be kind of tricky to base off of last week because they ran I think they ran like 40, 50 times, like as a unit. So in terms of like where the pass volume is, they only threw it like 17 times. Andrew's got like 1 target out of that. Likely got like 3. But I mean, either way, it's very not optimistic at this point. It's just like I would have thought they would have used him as like Mark Andrews at least as like a receiver, but I guess because Zay Flowers is just the schemed up target guy, like he's like the first read. I guess that's just not something that Andrews is gonna do. So unless he catches like a touchdown or a few catches, like I just don't know how sustainable like a decent volume is going to be week to week.
I
mean,
heard,
the same with the same with likely too. Just because like if the I think the Ravens want to run like a lot, like that's how they want to win these games. They don't want to win in the shootout. So unless like it's like more of a tougher run defense they go against, then maybe I would probably plug him in. But other than that, it's gonna be spotty week to week.
I heard a
Go
stat
ahead,
today
Sean.
where he had 9 fantasy points, I believe, in 3 games.
Yeah,
I think, and like last week's a little off because against the Cowboys they're a run funnel defense. I mean, you're going to run the ball against them. They can't stop the run, so that was skewed a little bit. But like again, here's another guy where you drafted him. I think he's was drafted early, and right now he's tight end 29. So
yeah. I've seen him get dropped in the
that's
season.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, same with likely, like you probably put up a lot of fab to get him, or a lot of priority to get him week after that blow up week 1 performance, and then yeah, in terms of consistency, I don't know if it's there. Like one of them might pop off, but another one might get a goose egg. So unless something like drastically happens where they have to reshuffle their receivers, I don't know if Andrew's commanding that many more targets this year compared to previous years. But yeah, what do you stand on that, Cody?
Yeah, I mean it was disappointing to say the least. I mean goose eggs for Andrews, man, and likely didn't do much either.
Mm-hmm.
I think until Lamar slows down on the ground, I mean he's got 254 rushing yards. I mean that's more than what at least 5 of the running back RB1s right now, right? Like if not more. And I mean, that offense right now is going through his legs, and as it should. But man, I don't know if it's just no rapport between Andrews and Lamar anymore, or if it's just always going to be such a game plan dependent situation with them. But it's really frustrating, and it kind of leads me to another guy that I think is trending in the other direction. So the more we talk about these tight ends, that I think the more fascinating this conversation gets, because I'm sitting here staring at a name on my paper here, and I can see this guy finishing in the top 10 this week. That's Tyler Conklin. So Aaron Rodgers, he likes his dudes, right? He likes Alan Lazard. Him and Garrett Wilson aren't quite on the same page yet. But Conklin, I mean, he's got 5 catches on 6 targets for 93 yards last week. That's eye-opening right there. That's really eye-opening. And the Jets are going to Denver, right? And the Jets don't run a ton of plays on offense. They don't, they're not out there running at a big clip like the Bears or the Rams or something like that. And so I think Conklin, he doesn't get like a ton of volume, but the reps that he does get, the targets that he does get are really quality targets. And all we're talking about, if he can connect on 5 of these a game, and he can sprinkle a touchdown in there once in a while for 70 yards, 80 yards here and there. I mean, I can see Conklin really being a factor with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback in that slow-paced offense.
Mm-hmm. He had a great game last week.
Great game.
Yeah, and Denver's corners, they're going to be covering or passing probably going to be on Garrett Wilson. So I don't envision him getting back to being a productive receiver this week at least. So yeah, things could definitely funnel to Conklin for sure. Sean, what are you gonna say?
I got a couple names out there that I mean, this is a homer pick for me, obviously, but if Fields targets Freiermuth as a number 2 option in the passing game in a desolate position, he could finish as a tight end 1 this week.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Warren right now did not practice today, so if he's not there, you lose that pass. You know, the attempts that I should say the targets that he gets will go away, and then Jake Ferguson, he was out
Mhm.
week 2, played last week. We could all, I think all of us could make an argument that Ferguson is the second option in that passing game right now, because
Yeah.
Cooks has fallen off. Tolbert's on the rise, obviously, but he's a red zone threat for sure for Dallas, and a team that throws the ball a lot. And they
Right.
play at a quick pace. They play at a good pace too.
Hmm.
Yeah, he had a real nice game. 11 targets. That's huge volume. That's massive. That's right up there with the top tight end targets every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, before we send off this show, any last tight end flyers this week? It's gonna be hard because like we're basically chasing like the performance from the week prior,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're just hoping it sticks. It's just so hard to predict right now with some of these guys.
Yeah, one that has kind of stood out to me, and it's really not fact based by much, other than every time the Seattle
vibes.
Seahawks go play at Ford Field in Detroit, it's a high scoring game, and it comes down to the wire, and there's just a lot of targets to go around. So one dude that I see is Noah Fant for the Seahawks this week. I know the linebacker's pretty good for Detroit, but I think they're going to be really focused on that run game, DK, the Jigba, and Tyler Lockett. I think Noah Fant, he's been kind of sleeping through 3 games this year. I could see him coming away with 5-6 catches, a touchdown, and 65 yards.
Yep. I mean, mine wasn't really, a sleeper with the Ferguson, but I mean, he's someone I think that's in a team that plays at a quick pace. He would be mine. Like I mentioned him in, Fire Mute this week. If they're going to look over the middle to loosen up the outside, if they're going to roll coverage to Pickens, then someone else has to be open. And same, basketball concept. If you're double teaming one player, then somebody else has to be open. So those are a couple that just kind of reiterate the 2 that I had.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's it for the show. Sean, where can they find your work and social media?
Social media, I'm at the Coach's Desk on Twitter, and then I have Discord channel. You can put that in there. If you go to my Twitter page, my link to join my Discord's on there. That's where I post all my content that I do for Total Impact Sports. I run on the fantasy side and the betting side. So each week I do a 3-team parlay, NFL, NCAA, and I write the DFS main slate article for Total Apex as well.
Great. Yeah, Cody.
Nice. On X, I'm Cody from Montana, Cody from MT, and then on Instagram, I'm Scenic42, and then I'm the Bears beat writer on Total Apex Sports website. And need to get back into writing some more fantasy articles here. I haven't quite had time, but looking forward to getting back in there a little bit.
Yeah. Follow us on Total Apex Sports